Today, I'm joined by Farella Senior Associate Taylor Porter to discuss the movie Mamma Mia. With ABBA's blend of pop, rock, and disco setting the tone, Taylor and I discuss some of the common estate planning issues faced by blended families and the importance of keeping estate planning documents up to date. Should Sam, Harry, and Bill revise their estate plans after their trip to Greece? What do we think about Pierce Brosnan's singing? We explore these questions and more, and as Sam Carmichael would say, why waste a good wedding? Welcome to The Verdict, Estate Planning Through Film, brought to you by the Private Client Group at Farella, Braun & Martel. I'm Hans Young, a family wealth partner at Farella. Through this podcast, my guests and I will provide an entertaining look at family wealth and estate planning topics through well-known Hollywood movies. Each episode will focus on a single movie as we discuss fun facts, review our favorite scenes, and engage in thought-provoking discussions of real-world legal issues. And lastly, do you agree with our verdict? Is the movie a guilty pleasure or just not guilty? Again, welcome to The Verdict, Estate Planning Through Film. I'm really excited to have my colleague, Taylor Porter, as my guest on the podcast today. Taylor is a senior associate and a member of Farella's Family Wealth Group. She advises individuals and families on developing comprehensive estate, gift, and income tax planning strategies to achieve their unique financial planning goals. She seeks to develop an in-depth understanding of each individual she assists and their family dynamic to advise accordingly and create a strong foundation for a multi-generational working relationship. Taylor, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Hans. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So this is actually your first time as a guest on the podcast. When we were going through movie ideas, you immediately and very quickly picked Mamma Mia. So I'm curious to hear about your connection to the movie in just a minute. But for any listeners who maybe wondered whether we would only cover action movies, which of course is still the genre that is nearest and dearest to my heart, this episode and a couple of the next ones actually are for you. Before we discuss several interesting estate planning issues that we spotted in this movie, let's first get to some fun facts. So Mamma Mia, the musical, opened in London's West End in 1999 and then on Broadway from 2001 to 2015. The movie released on July 18th, 2008. It was a big box office success, grossed $611.4 million worldwide on just a $52 million budget. The movie features music from the 1970s Swedish pop band ABBA. The movie's actually Meryl Streep's biggest box office hit, which was a surprise, to me at least. I didn't think that. Number 2 is The Devil Wears Prada, which I actually thought was her number 1.
Wow, that actually surprises me.
Yeah.
Number 2.
Mamma Mia spawned a sequel in 2018, Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again, which still performed really well at the box office, although not as well as the first one. And as I was preparing for this, I was thinking about it. I actually have a kind of a long history with musicals and musical films. I watched The Sound of Music at a very young age. It's still a favorite in my house with my kids, my family. I've actually been in some musicals as part of the choir, so not the acting parts, in middle school and high school. Definitely grateful that iPhones weren't around back then. I don't think there's much footage. It was definitely recorded, so I'm sure there's footage out there somewhere. I hope it doesn't resurface.
Very cool of you, Hans. Very cool.
Yet, despite all that, I somehow missed this movie when it came out. And actually, the first time I watched it, I'm almost embarrassed to say, was to prepare for this episode, which I think we found funny when we were first discussing this. I would say the 2 movies I have seen that kind of give me Mamma Mia vibes are My Big Fat Greek Wedding and The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. I don't know if you feel that way, but it definitely gave me those vibes. When did you watch this movie for the first time, if you remember, and why do you have a strong connection to it?
You know, I think I watched this movie for the first time in theaters. I may even have my ticket. I used to collect those and put those on my corkboard. Shout out 90s kids.
Nice.
But I think that might have been the first time. Probably went with my sister and my mom. Probably was singing in the audience with everyone else. And since then, to be honest, I've watched it probably over 10 times, maybe 15. First of all, it's always on, and I always want it to be on in the background when it is on, when I'm cleaning or when I'm doing something else in the house. And it's just a fun, lighthearted movie to throw on whenever you're feeling that. So
Nice.
We love it in our household.
Yeah, I'm sad to have missed it, but I don't have that long history with it. But in doing some research for this, it's definitely a movie that has, and a musical that has a lot of people love. And so I totally get it. And it's kind of cool. So this next fact, the cast members all performed their own singing, which I thought was cool. We'll come back to this later. And I think you and I kind of discussed this before, but I think it both helps it and I don't know. I know this is like, I think people are divided about this, but it also, I think, hurts it in some ways. But they all did their own singing, which is cool.
Yeah, I remember that was the reason why a lot of people went to go see it in theaters, because they were so excited to listen to, Meryl Streep sing, or more so Pierce Brosnan, which we can talk about that later. I thought he gave it his all, but that was definitely an interesting part of the movie for sure.
Apparently, Pierce Brosnan had no idea what the project was about when he signed on.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, the producers only told him it was being filmed in Greece and that Meryl Streep was starring. And supposedly he said he wanted to be a part of any project involving her. So Meryl Streep went to Stockholm, Sweden, to record her vocals for the song "The Winner Takes It All." And apparently she did it in one take. So pretty awesome that she did that.
Yeah, that's an emotional scene too. So quite an accomplishment.
Yeah. In the scene where the cast performs the song Dancing Queen, ABBA member Benny is seen playing the piano. Then toward the end of the movie, member Bjorn appears dressed as a Greek god. So this film probably, I would imagine, helped ABBA's career and kind of lengthened it, maybe revitalized it. And I would think ABBA's music here, definitely helped the success of this film, given that there was by the time this came out, there were almost 2+ decades of folks who had been listening to their music. So yeah. I'm sure that helped.
Yeah. I also saw that Cher was offered the role of Tanya, Donna's crazy friend. And she had something else going on at the time, so she had to say no. But thankfully, she was recast in Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again. So it was fun to see her in that as well.
So I had to give a shout out to Donna and the Dynamos. They're a female band comprised of Donna and her best friends, Tanya and Rosie. I don't think we can answer this question. I mean, from what I could tell, I think fans are divided on this. But what I was wondering is, does ABBA exist in their universe? So in the Mamma Mia universe, are Donna and the Dynamos an ABBA cover band? Are these supposed to be songs that they actually originally wrote?
I think it's what they originally wrote. I think that's how they play it in the movie.
Yeah. I think that
they seem to be kind of like young songwriters on the road, hanging out with different bands and having a lot of fun and making a lot of memories and wearing amazing costumes.
Yeah. It's a bummer for those characters because, I mean, if that's the case, they really should have had ABBA's success. And yet somehow it didn't quite happen for them. But yeah, I think people are divided about it. But I think it probably, I mean, they never mention ABBA by name. The members who appear in the movie obviously are just cameos, background characters. So I would think that's probably the right answer. Did you have any other fun facts that you found that you wanted to share?
I found the scene where Donna is singing Slipping Through My Fingers right before Sophie gets married. They have scenes where the girls are both laughing. They're on the bed, tossing their hair, getting ready for the wedding. And in order for the girls to actually laugh that hard, they had to play heavy metal music in the background. So those scenes you obviously are just hearing the song Slipping Through My Fingers, but there's really heavy metal music going on.
That's nice.
So to think about that happening was pretty funny.
I think that you probably watched that scene differently knowing that.
Yeah, definitely.
So we normally here would cover and talk about our favorite scene, but I think given that this is a musical film, it's only fitting that we cover or discuss our favorite song instead. And I thought for fun, we could sing through a few of our favorite songs. No, I'm just joking. I had to see the look on your face just to think if I was serious.
I'm over here like I'm ready.
Yeah, that's actually what I was just going to say.
I have a mic.
You didn't flinch at all. I was like, oh man, what did I just get myself into? So I guess I'll go first. I mean, you have a longer history with it. I want to hear your thoughts. The only song I really came into this, like I said, I didn't have a huge exposure to ABBA prior to this movie. I mean, I knew who they were, knew a couple of their songs, but that was it. But I think for me, Dancing Queen, I think it's a song of theirs that I knew the most coming into the movie. And it's iconic. Yeah, it's iconic. I still think to me, it captures this movie the best. I will say the runner-up for me was Voulez-Vous. I just think like the melody stuck in my head. It was like the full cast was there. It was this they're outdoors or they're having that party. I thought it was a lot of fun. And so that's my runner-up. But I want to give the floor to you. And which is your favorite song? If you can choose one, I think it's probably like trying to choose your favorite child.
Yeah, that might have been the hardest question of the year so far. What's your favorite song from Mamma Mia? I mean, obviously Dancing Queen, great song. Mamma Mia, again, both iconic. I also really liked Lay All Your Love on Me. That was a good one as well. Mm-hmm. Emotional scene between Sky and Sophie, and then the men crawl out of the ocean in snorkel gear.
That's right.
And then the men on the dock in snorkel gear, just doing a full choreography moment. That was hilarious. And then they all, jump in the water at the end and the boys go off on their bachelor party. And then that transitions right into Super Trooper and then Gimme, 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 part of the bachelorette party, which is just like the ultimate bachelorette dream. I think a lot of girls just see that scene and they decide, yes, that's what I want at some point in my bachelorette weekend. I want this happening. Sparkles, lights, music, dancing, all of it. I would say those two scenes and those two, or maybe three songs, were probably my favorite. And then also just more meaningful, and partially why I chose this movie. I chose it around the time right before when I was getting married, and I watched the movie, and it's just so emotional around the time of slipping through my fingers when you have your mom and the daughter come together. Yeah. Honestly made me cry right before my wedding. But just a really sweet moment. And, as they're walking up to that beautiful church too, it's a really pretty song.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess, we have time. Can you pick a favorite scene? Maybe we'll cover that too. That might even be tougher than the song.
I know. But the first thing that came to mind was the church scene when they're actually getting married and they decide not to get married. And then Sam Carmichael is like, well, everyone's here. Why don't we do it? Sorry for the spoiler alert.
Right. Exactly. Well, the movie, yeah, I've taken the position that if something's this old, you can't even give a spoiler alert. I think in the first episode, in the Top Gun Maverick episode, because I had to reveal that in Top Gun 1 that Goose dies. And I think I intentionally spoiled 3 other movies just for the person who hasn't watched Top Gun after, 30 years or 40 years or whatever it is.
Do you have a favorite scene?
I would say the one that sticks out, and this is for people who love this movie, maybe this isn't the one, but I also didn't really quite know what I was getting into. I had never seen the musical either. So when I watched it in prepping for this, I really didn't know what to expect. I knew the premise going in, but that was it. But where I started to get this is a fun and silly musical and movie. It has a certain rhythm to it. And it was when the 3 men first arrive and then they get shuttled into the attic.
Yeah.
And they have the whole song happening. And then they're poking their head in through they're hiding. That to me, it was the first scene where I sort of understood, I think, what the movie was going after. And I think that was a scene that did it for me.
Yeah, that's a funny one.
I think we wanted to talk about, and gosh, there's so many issues raised by this movie. I feel like this with every film we cover on this series, but it's really challenging to focus on just a couple of them, particularly in this movie. But for the sake of time, that's, exactly what we're going to do is just talk through a few of the issues we spotted in this estate planning opportunities category that we'll go to next. And for the sake of our discussion, I think we've got to assume that in the Mamma Mia universe, California law applies and governs in the Greek islands as well, because a lot of this doesn't make sense if you're trying to look at it from, what probably Greek law actually says. But we wanted to focus on a couple of characters and their situations and some of the issues that come up. And, given that she's the main character, I thought it fitting to cover and discuss Sophie first. Again, this is another spoiler, but I'm happy to share it. Even by the end of the movie, Sophie and we as the audience still don't know who her biological father is. And the 3 potential men, Sam, Harry, and Bill, also do not know whether Sophie is their biological daughter. So you have this scenario, and I think it presents itself a good launching off point for a discussion is, Sam, Harry, and Bill in the movie each agrees to be 1/3 of Sophie's father, which is sweet and touching in the moment for the purposes of the film. But I got thinking about what if they were lying and they didn't really mean it? I think they might be wondering, is there a possibility that Sophie would inherit from one of them if it's later determined that she is indeed one of their biological daughter? So it brings up this term that you and I know and are familiar with, and maybe people who don't deal with estate planning issues may not have heard of, but it's pretermitted child. And I was going to just give you the baton. And what is a pretermitted child? Why is it relevant in this situation if it's later determined that Sophie is actually one of their daughters and they haven't updated or done anything with their estate planning documents?
Yeah, so a pretermitted child is a child who is not mentioned in the will of a decedent, but would have been included if the decedent had known about their existence. So, for example, let's just use Sam. Sam has a will. He knows about Sophie and the potential of him being his daughter. If he doesn't include her in his will, if he doesn't outright name her, then she would be considered to be a pretermitted child.
Yeah, it's exactly right. And, if that child's basically born or adopted after a parent's will or trust even was created or amended, and if they're not mentioned, then, the thinking behind California law is, well, that parent probably forgot about updating that document, right? Maybe they never got around to it. I think that's the spirit behind the concept of a pretermitted child, is that the law is saying if you've forgotten to update your document, you would have done so, is what our assumption is, then they should be entitled to something. And so a pretermitted child under California law is generally entitled to an intestate share of the estate, which that just means they would receive the share that they should have received had that parent died without a will. And so they would be on equal footing as a child that was actually acknowledged in those documents, of course. So that would be potentially a problem here for Sam, Harry, or Bill if they actually don't, despite all the warm feelings, if they come back from Greece and they leave that wedding and they say, well, actually, I don't really want to be involved in Sophie's life, or more importantly, regardless of that, I don't want her to inherit from me. They would need to take some steps to make sure that she isn't deemed to be a pretermitted heir or child. There are generally two exceptions to a pretermitted child receiving a share of their parents' estate. Can you just walk us through those real quick?
Okay, so the two exceptions would be if the parent's failure to provide for the child under their will was intentional, or the second exception would be if the parent provided outside of their will or trust in lieu of the child's testamentary share.
Yeah, which makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, if the law is intending to sort of plug this gap that they assume has happened, right? That you have a child that you forgot to provide for in your documents, that pretermitted child is going to get a share, as we mentioned, but that's going to be overridden by the fact if there's some evidence that you failed to provide for them intentionally, right? They're not going to supersede your actual wishes as the parent. So that's going to be one exception. And the second one is if there's some type of showing that you had the intention to provide for your child outside of your will or trust in lieu of a actual testamentary share. So maybe there's life insurance, retirement account, some other asset that may have passed them, or a gift of cash or some other asset that happened outside of your normal estate plan documents, that would also override that. So going back to our characters here, if Sam, Harry, or Bill each wants to prevent Sophie from being deemed a pretermitted child and receiving her share, they really should update their estate plan accordingly when they get back home from this wedding. By the way, I went to ask, this is going back to some of the plot, but the three men show up, and they show up because they've been invited to this wedding, but they don't know, they don't know who the wedding's even for? Like they just decided to go? Like, is that because did they know that Donna was going to be there? I kind of forget about that part of it.
Yeah, I think they get a letter. We'll have to look this up, and I'm sorry for not knowing this. I'm embarrassed, but I think they get a letter from Donna asking them to come. I'm not quite sure if it speaks of a wedding. It might just be her inviting them back to the island.
Okay.
I'll have to look that up.
I thought I thought that they went knowing that there was a wedding, but they didn't know who it was for. But I could be wrong. This discussion with Sam, Harry, and Bill and Sophie really highlights the importance of ensuring that your estate planning documents are up to date, primarily so that you avoid unintended consequences. So really important that each of those characters, I mean, if it's true that they don't want Sophie to inherit from them, they might take just the precautionary measure of updating their estate planning documents. I think the other issues we wanted to address have to do with blended families, because that's really what we have here when we focus on a couple of these characters soon. So a blended family describes a couple and their children from their current relationship as well as their previous relationships. And the reason we come across this often in what we do is that there are some estate planning issues that commonly impact blended families and are unique to blended families. So in our case, we have Sam, who marries Donna at the end of the movie. So it's now Sam, Donna, but we also know that Sam's got two sons. I don't know if they were ever given names, so we'll just refer to them as Sam's sons. But Sam's got two sons who we know are adults from a prior marriage of his. So you've got Sam and his sons, his ex-wife, who is not a character in the movie, but is mentioned. And then you've got Sam and Donna, and then you've got Sophie. So this is this blended family. And the scenario and why this might present some planning opportunities, particularly for Sam, is that while Sam loves both Donna and his sons, how might he provide for them in his estate plan should he die first, particularly now that he has married Donna? I think the discussion or the thought process for him in this scenario is also important because there's at least what appears to be an uneven balance of assets between Sam and Donna. Presumably, Sam is bringing in significantly more wealth to the marriage. I think the movie portrays him as a wealthy architect living in the U.S. Donna, while she's got the hotel, I think we learned that the hotel is struggling financially. And so they're not on equal footing from a financial standpoint going into the marriage. So again, it highlights the importance of what should Sam do and some of the things he should be thinking about. And the first thing is just, if Sam dies first, would he pass his assets out to Donna at all? And I would think probably. I mean, this is, from the movie, this is like his long lost love. I mean, he has apparently been thinking about her for, many, many years, even though they weren't together. And so I would think that he would leave her something, maybe everything. And so that brings up this, the scenario or the question of, should he pass assets to her outright, meaning that at his death, all of these assets that he owns goes directly to her in her own name, or should they go in some type of trust, like a marital trust or a bypass trust? And really the point of this is it's protection for Sam's sons, right? How do we prevent Donna from potentially at least disinheriting Sam's sons in favor of Sophie? Because if he passes all of his assets outright to Donna and she decides, well, these are my assets now, and I actually want to leave everything for Sophie because I don't even know Sam's sons, she can do that. And I think you and I wanted to bring up under California law. So Sam's sons are Donna's stepchildren. What would happen to them what would happen to them under these circumstances, given that they didn't know each other and had no relationship until I think she might have even learned about them when he comes to the islands? What would happen to them if she doesn't provide for them specifically?
So it's important to note that Sam's sons are Donna's stepchildren, and stepchildren wouldn't be able to take from the estate unless it's shown that there was a relationship between Donna as the step-parent and Sam's sons as the stepchildren, if that relationship began when the sons were minors, which here, that doesn't really happen. So, I mean, that would be hard to, unless we don't know the age of the sons, but just based on Sam's age.
Yeah.
I'm
presumably
assuming
they're
not
adults.
minors.
Yeah.
And I guess if we're looking at Sophie too, thinking that Donna and Sam are the same age, they're probably not minors. So I don't know if that could be met either.
Yeah, no, that's right. And, under California law, stepchildren, they don't automatically inherit as heirs of a step parent unless, again, certain requirements are met, one of which is, the relationship, as you mentioned, needing to start during that stepchild's minor years and continue until present. There's a couple other exceptions, requirements as well. But the point is, a stepchild doesn't just automatically inherit. So in this case, if Sam just passes assets outright, right? That's the scenario we're working with, is he just passes assets outright to Donna. There is a real risk. And Donna seems like a really lovely person and probably wouldn't actually do this, but you just never know. By this point, Sam's gone. He's passed away first. So he has no way of guaranteeing this, that Donna will actually provide for his two sons, who are her stepchildren. And so it's entirely possible that she might provide less, or perhaps even cut them out altogether and just pass all of Sam's assets to Sophie.
Yeah, and we're not too sure about Sam's assets and how much he actually has, but Donna has a lot of expenses with the hotel and, all of the different projects that she has going on there that she'll need to spend on. She may be spending this money down over time so that upon her death, there might not be a lot left. And that could be, a situation as well, too.
Yeah, and she's probably funding those, elaborate costumes for the dynamos. And,
those are expensive. I've looked into them.
Yeah, right. So yeah, I think the alternative here, rather than Sam passing assets outright to Donna, as I mentioned earlier, he could do so in a trust structure. So usually this is a marital trust and or a bypass trust. We don't have time to go into the details of those today, but the point is they can be structured such that they're in a trust format for Donna and her, so she can spend it down during her lifetime, but that there's at least some parameters, right? She's got to, usually these are done with some type of ascertainable standard where,
right.
And plus a priority. Usually these are drafted such that, if Donna has her own assets, she should really be spending those down first before she spends down assets left to her in one of these types of subtrusts. And so again, there's at least some precautions. And so at the end of the trust, as you and I know, because we're frequently working with clients on these types of trusts, is that the remainder beneficiaries of a trust like this would generally be the children of Sam. And so that would include, and it would kind of force the issue and write Sam's sons back into the picture here. And again, we don't have time to cover this issue either on this episode, but usually at the end of these trusts, you can often give the surviving spouse, so in this case, Donna, what's called a power of appointment, where she can redirect assets of the trust, sometimes within certain parameters, or maybe as she wishes. And so here, probably if Sam were to be concerned about his sons inheriting from him, he would likely leave assets to Donna in either a marital and or a bypass trust, and that probably not give her this power of appointment, so that he gets to determine that at the end of this trust, at the end of Donna's life, the remainder beneficiaries would be his sons only. Or, again, that's another question that they have to at least consider, because they're in a blended family situation, is whether or not he would include Sophie in this, regardless of whether he's, a biological child or not. Perhaps, they live happily together with Donna as a new big family. And so maybe he treats her equally or provides for her, but he gets to determine all this in this trust format. One of the things, though, that if he chooses to go down this road, and we were thinking about, is if he provides for Donna in a trust, it becomes very important who the trustee of that trust is going to be. Generally, in a non-blended family situation, it's very common to have the surviving spouse be the sole trustee of that marital and or bypass trust. Here, this may not serve Sam's intentions or wishes, right? Because if the whole point is to protect his sons from being disinherited, or the assets just being spent down with no oversight, then it may not be the best scenario for him to appoint Donna as sole trustee over these trusts. And so it's important for Sam to think about who should serve as a trustee. Is it going to be Donna? Probably not a good idea, although it is technically possible that the sons, either one or both of them serve as co-trustees with Donna. I think that can get really awkward, as we've seen, and we know that, that dynamic between the stepchildren or stepchild and the step-parent is not going to be helped along by that type of structure.
Yeah, well, Donna would have to go to the stepchild every time she wants money for for her to make distributions to herself, which could get awkward.
Yeah. And it may be, that's the thing, is that it creates a situation that can be awkward, very awkward, but it might actually be, and that's kind of the dilemma here. And I don't think these are just things that Sam should think about and needs to consider. They're important decisions, but maybe that's exactly what he wants, right? And it depends on what dynamic he wants to have and how much he wants to leave to Donna versus his sons. And some other options, he could always, if he wants to take that burden off of his sons and not create that dynamic, and maybe he can have a corporate trustee or a private professional fiduciary, either one of those serving as sole trustee over the trust for Donna, or maybe they serve as co-trustee with Donna. And that way he at least takes that onus off of his sons and doesn't force his sons and Donna into an awkward situation, and only made more awkward should they disagree with her on a distribution down the road.
Yeah, and we're talking about Sam's estate plan, and it's also just something to note that this could be seen for Donna's as well, when she's making her estate plan, how she wants to divide her assets between Sam's family and Sophie. Donna being a businesswoman, and Sophie and Sky, Sophie's soon-to-be husband, being involved in that business as well. She may want to give that to them, which we'll discuss too.
Yeah. Do we think Sky is actually going to come back in the picture, or was it left like he's going? And I haven't seen the second one, so maybe in Here We Go Again, he's back again. But no, putting that aside, I mean, they stopped the wedding because I guess it was, I don't know if it was just insinuated. I don't think it was just insinuated. I think it was very clearly said that he needed to go like travel the world or go out and see the world or something like that, right? Or
Yeah, I think, I don't know how old they are in the movie. I don't know if they ever say their ages, but a couple things to clear up. So the three men did come to the island for a wedding.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
That apparently they didn't know who the wedding was for, but I think they ignore that fact and they just want to see Donna, and they think that they're being invited to see Donna by Donna.
Got it. Yeah.
So,
bold decision to just show up. I guess, I can understand the motivation there.
They're all interested, as is the audience, as to where this is going to lead. But yeah, in the wedding scene though, going back to Sky, I think they both realize that they're just young to get married. They're young to be taking over this hotel, and they want to go explore the world more before their life gets more complicated than it is right now. And I think they got a chance to do that a little bit when they met each other, but they've been back at the island ever since, and they kind of, didn't shake that travel bug. So they wanted to get back out into the world and have those experiences. And so they both leave together on the boat. I think still engaged, still planning on getting married and coming back to the island. But yeah, that's kind of how it all ends.
Yeah. And that you brought it up correctly that, we'd been talking all this time about, Sam's estate plan and his, from his perspective. But, these issues or questions also persist for Donna as well, from her perspective. So, let's focus now on, I guess, Donna, Sophie, and the hotel. We know that Donna runs this hotel. Again, the movie gives us some breadcrumbs that it's not doing, rather well. I think it's struggling. Doesn't one of the men as a wedding gift, I forget if it's Colin Firth's character, I don't know if it's Harry or Bill, but doesn't someone gift her some like they give her a check or something sort of midway through the movie. But anyway, I think that happens, and I think the intimation is that the hotel's not doing the best, but nonetheless, I mean, there is this asset in overseas in Greece. And so if Donna dies first, I think one thing that she should be asking herself, right, would be, who does she leave the hotel to? Does she leave it to Sam, maybe directly to Sophie? Or, and I don't think this would likely be a good idea, but maybe she leaves it to them both and they co-own it. What do we think would Sam and Sophie. What do we think would actually happen? I guess putting aside the legal, just within the movie, knowing what we know of Donna and these characters, what do you think she would do?
I think Sam would want to be involved because there's an emotional tie there. Let's just say Donna's no longer around. But ultimately, I think Donna would give it to Sophie, and maybe Sophie could eventually co-own it with Sky, as Sky being her future husband or current husband, wherever they are. But I think ultimately Sophie would come back. That's kind of, I feel, where her heart is and where her passion lies, and who wouldn't want to live there? So
right. Yeah, there are worse things to come back to.
Yeah. So I mean, I can see Donna giving it to Sophie, and then Sophie kind of knows most of the ropes there and how things are run, and so it should be a pretty smooth transition if it's just given to Sophie. I'd say that's the easiest route. Yeah,
and I think when in doing that, Donna would have to make plans for that in her estate plan, or provisions for that in her estate plan, because these are assets that are going to be passing directly to Sophie rather than to Sam, if she decides to do that. And I think as a sort of second kind of umbrella of issues or questions for Donna, she has a lot of business succession planning considerations, right, for the hotel, because she's got this business in the family that obviously means a lot to her. It means a lot to Sophie. These are just some questions I rattled off or jotted down as I was watching. some of this assumes that she might consider leaving this to Sam and Sophie, but nonetheless, who operates the hotel, or will it be sold following Donna's death, right? I think from a movie perspective, knowing these characters, I agree with you. It sounds like Sophie would continue this. I don't think it doesn't seem like, given the love for her mom and what this hotel and this place means to that family, that she would sell it. But again, that question is there. Does it get sold? Does it operate? If Sam and Sophie are going to be co-owners, for example, how will they agree on matters involving the hotel or the company, so to speak, if it's owned in some type of legal entity? Those are questions that should be thought about. And, if there are corporate or governing instruments that need to be put in place to govern that relationship, these are things that Donna would be best served thinking about and doing while she's still alive, and can actually weigh in on the matter rather than waiting for her death. And then Sam and Sophie have to butt heads trying to figure some of this stuff out.
Yeah, I feel like there may be some things to clean up on the corporate governance side with regard to that hotel, but I'm sure Sam has knowledge on that and could help Sophie.
Yeah, that's true too. What happens if one of them wants to be bought out, right? How will that selling partner's interest be valued? These are all relevant questions for Donna to consider, as she probably needs to revisit her own estate plan, right? As a result of this, her new marriage to Sam. And one thing, again, we can't cover everything, but one thing I did want to highlight life insurance as an estate planning tool in these situations, because in all the scenarios we're talking about, I think that life insurance could really help. It can be an estate planning tool, and it's commonly used to provide greater equality between individuals within a blended family. And so, as an example, insurance could be used to provide for adult children from a prior marriage who might not be receiving their biological parents' inheritance until after the step-parent dies. In that case, life insurance would be structured so its proceeds go directly to the adult children upon the passing of their parent who has remarried, and then other assets in that parent's estate can pass to the surviving spouse. So this is very in line with what these characters are dealing with. So just looking at it from Sam's son's perspectives, they are these adult children from a prior marriage who, let's say Sam does want to provide everything to Donna, whether in trust or outright, but it's, they got to wait till Donna passes until they receive their inheritance. One thing, an option that Sam might consider, I think it may not heal all the bitterness or resentment if there's any, but it'd be an option that might make things better, is that he could provide for them in the form of a life insurance policy so that they get something immediately upon his passing and don't have to then wait for their step parent to pass, right? Wait for Donna to pass before they get something. And so there's that possibility. Same thing for Donna, right? She can make, whether it's Sophie or even her stepsons, she could provide for them with life insurance on her own life. And so, again, just wanted to highlight that as a possibility here, is that life insurance can be a very useful tool in this context. Also can be used as a source of funds to pay the estate tax, which, again, I think what we're left with is that Sam is wealthy. He's likely to have a large estate in excess of his, although we don't know, but I guess we could look back at that time, but it would be less than what the current estate tax exemption is, which is for 2025 is $13.99 million per individual. Sam's estate is likely larger than that amount. And so he'll likely be subject to estate tax, which life insurance might be helpful to help fund that payment after his passing. Anything you'd like to add to that discussion?
Life insurance comes up with our clients more so for the payment of estate tax. And we typically run through those calculations with them. It's a great tool to use, especially, when the estate might not have a lot of liquid assets. If our clients are wealthy because of the real estate that they own, for example, that the family doesn't necessarily want to sell off or sell portions of in order to pay the estate tax. Exactly.
Yeah. And again, we don't have enough time to cover the intricate details of life insurance planning here, but probably at least worth noting that, if Sam wants to do this and he doesn't want the life insurance proceeds to only add to his estate, which would in turn add to his estate tax problem, he really needs to have that life insurance structured accordingly, which would typically involve an irrevocable life insurance trust or an ILIT as we know it in our world. And maybe that's a topic we cover another time, but just wanted to make that note. But I think the overarching concerns and considerations here in all of the scenarios we just walked through, it's with blended families is there, and this is true of all families, is there's needs to be weighed and balanced the dynamics between family harmony, the emotional dynamics between all these characters. I mean, just kind of going back through it as a recap, between Sam and Donna, the decisions to leave assets to each other outright versus in trust, maybe if one of them, hypothetically, if they insist on having another trustee or co-trustee serving with the surviving spouse, or if they bring up, the desire to have a prenup or a postnuptial agreement. These are all sensitive topics that warrant consideration, but that, again, can affect the relationship between Sam and Donna, and so probably needs to be thought about and brought up gently and dealt with delicately. There's also the dynamic between Sam's sons and Donna. The sons waiting on an inheritance potentially because they're waiting until Donna's passing. The sons, as you mentioned, possibly serving as trustee and approving distributions to Donna, which could only be made more complicated, I guess, by the fact that, sometimes we see client situations where the adult children from a prior marriage, it's not, I think in this case, I think we can safely assume in the movie that Sam's sons are younger than Donna, but that's not always the case and doesn't have to be the case. It's entirely possible for his sons or children from a prior marriage to be the same age or even older than the step-parent, and which, again, is only going to lead to more complicated dynamics. And then finally, we have the dynamics here between Sam and Sophie, right? Does Sam treat her on equal footing with his sons? Does he even perhaps, as we mentioned, if he doesn't actually mean what he said earlier in the movie about, being her father or acting as her father, even if whether she's his biological daughter or not, does he even intentionally omit her from the planning? So there's that kind of dynamic and tension. And then, as we mentioned, the goals for the hotel, if Donna leaves that to one or both of them, all of those considerations also affects their relationship. Anything else you want to add on that?
Yeah, I think for Sam and Donna now, since they're married, it would be a post-nup discussion now at this point. But since they were quick to decide on that, maybe they'll be quick to wrap up a post-nup. But that's always some tension, no matter how strong or weak your relationship may be. Hoping for the more stronger side, of course. And then with the parents of Sam and Donna and the kids, difficult situations, I guess more so with Donna, since we don't really know their relationship at all yet because she hasn't met them. But Sam and Sophie just met each other. Sophie, although she's happy to meet potentially 3 of her dads at once, whoever is her biological father or not, they haven't been a part of her life and haven't volunteered to be her father throughout her whole life. So, she has that in the back of her mind and maybe unsettling for her at some times. But I think we see in the movie that she's just excited to finally have that father figure in her life and that support.
It was a big day for her, right? The wedding that she thought was going to occur didn't happen. Her mom now is in, she has got a new stepfather. And she still doesn't know who her biological father is, at least at the end of this movie.
Yeah, that day is already a very emotional day, but this took it to another level.
Right, totally. Okay, so this is the part where we get to the verdict. And I guess I'll start first. And I did enjoy this movie, and I sort of have now recognized the place it has in so many people's lives. I did enjoy it. But I think it is slightly guilty for me. And I already mentioned this to you before.
Why? You were in choir.
Yeah, right. I think it's because of that. And I only wanted Pierce Brosnan to have a better singing voice, I think. He had such a major role. And I agree with you. I think he gave it his all. And I think and to be fair, it's not like it's terrible. I just think for him being a central character in this, it would have been nice, like if we imagined someone else in his role who had just this awesome singing voice, I think it just would have added to it rather than detracted from it. But that's my thought. Like I said, overall I did like it, but that for me, I couldn't get over that hang up. But for you, I think we know your verdict.
Yeah, definitely not guilty. Love this movie. Love the play. Would see both again in a heartbeat. I think the play is actually coming to San Francisco soon. So I want to get some tickets again. It's just so fun. Everyone's dancing and singing. It's a great, great time, especially in San Francisco. You know, ultimately, I wish I had the Super Trooper bedazzled jumpsuit, and still looking on the market for one of those.
There's still time.
Pretty amazing.
There's still time, and there's a sequel, so we can always do it again. And,
in jumpsuits.
Yeah, maybe we do it in jumpsuits outside of the venue where the musical's playing.
Wow.
And we record it live there. That's our future.
Yeah, that sounds great. Your immediate future, though, is to watch Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again.
That's right.
Before Mamma Mia 3 comes out, which is rumored to come out maybe in the near future. We'll see. Fingers crossed.
All right. So what we've learned today is, one, it is important to periodically review and update your estate planning documents to ensure that they accurately reflect the current circumstances of the family, including any current and or former spouses and any newly born, adopted, or unadopted children. And two, this is especially important if, like Pierce Brosnan's character Sam, you are wealthy and have 2 adult children from a prior marriage. You fly to Greece to attend the wedding of a young couple you do not know at all. While there, you suddenly discover that you may now have an adult daughter from a prior relationship, and in a moment of spontaneity and at the wedding intended for that potential daughter, you marry your long-lost love, who happens to be her mother, and who also owns and operates a hotel in a foreign country. Taylor, thanks very much for joining me today. This was super fun, and I hope you'll do this again.
Thank you so much, Hans, for having me, and I'm already excited for the next episode.
Awesome. Well, I'm Hans Young with my guest, Farella Family Wealth Senior Associate Taylor Porter, and you've been listening to The Verdict, Estate Planning Through Film, brought to you by the Private Client Group at Farella, Braun & Martel. Thanks for joining us, and keep watching movies.